Big us, everyone. Welcome to Forever the Coach. Thanks for everyone's support with this series this year and having some almighty chats with some greats in the coaching game. And we continue to build here, and a great episode coming up. And I'd like to introduce everyone he's at Cranbourne West at his facility. He's from Carrum Downs here in Melbourne, Victoria. Coach Vik Grujic, how are you? How are things going at your end?
Fantastic. Thank you, Pat. But yeah, things going fantastic at the moment. Really good. Yeah. Obviously, with everything that we'd had last year, with the lockdowns and whatever, it had been a very horrible year for a lot of people. So yeah, doing really good at the moment. The facility now is starting to kick off and things are looking good.
Yeah, it looks great. Congratulations on that. And more so, congratulations on your career thus far. You know, we're going to have an opportunity here to get to know you a bit better. And it's a fun chat, you know, your stories, your highlights, some of your journey experiences. The angle I like for my viewers and listeners is, you know, we get some cool nuggets out of talking to, you know, people that have experienced some wonderful things in their journey in martial arts. So I'm looking forward to it, and I appreciate your time.
No, thank you, Pat.
All good. Vic, how did martial arts start in your life? What got you? You know, you've got a Serbian background with your family. Can you give us a bit of a brief on understanding how this art, or, you know, the arts came into your life?
Well, I'm quite old now by most people's standards. So 44 years of age just recently, child of the 70s, a kid of the 80s, you know. So we grew up a large family, I guess, you know, out in Broadmeadows, and, you know, grew up with my grandparents, and we used to live with them for a period of time too. And we had older uncles, and my oldest, one of my older uncles in particular, Bruce Lee mad. So like from the age of, I don't know, my very first few memories were just being dragged out to the drive-ins to watch Enter the Dragon, you know, when I was maybe 1 or 2 years old, you know. So we'd come home and just me and my older brother would, you know, be trying to kick the living crap out of each other, and, you know, and everything was just Bruce Lee. And even to this day, he's still like, he's got a place on my wall here in the academy. He's had such a massive impact on myself. So as my earliest memories of martial arts were obviously Bruce Lee and the influence that he placed in my life and the impact. And yeah, and from there, just snowballed from there. Martial arts was my life from day one.
You know, and out in Broadmeadows as such, being born and raised, you know, there's, as they say, and for those that aren't familiar with that area, it has its reputation for, you know, the immigration side of things, and everyone growing up a little bit harder than others. Was it a martial arts style that you ended up training, practicing? Where did it all slide in on that side of it?
Well, for the first few years as kids, we'd get trained by my uncle. He'd be trying to teach us how to throw punches and kicks, and him and his mates, you know, always be in the backyard and holding up pads and fly kicks across the backyard, and we'd be trying to replicate that. So we were training from a very early age, you know, without even realizing we were training. We're just participating in the fun. And I think it must have been maybe late 80s, I think, that we really got into it, stuck into it properly with now this is one of the things where, like, I've been trying to search and do some research, and my older brother has too, to try to find our original sensei. We studied, we used to live in Maidstone at one point, and we studied with the sensei. He was from Okinawa, and traditional, again, you're gonna have to excuse me, the actual style that we were being taught for a couple of years that we were there. So yeah, that was pretty much the first formal place we trained in karate back in the late 80s, and so.
Yeah, and then it ventures in, doesn't it? So then you've got you had the rush, and you get into this martial art type, you know, tradition with again, when I say Serbian background, as in, you know, the parents and the upbringing, it does, you know, it's not familiar, and there's a bit of taboo about it. But where were you seeing yourself at that age? Were you that teenager that was starting to go into that rebellious stage, loving staying fit, healthy, strong? You know, what was your angle with that side of it?
Well, with martial arts, it was always just there. Like, we didn't actually try to go out and seek it as much, because it was always just a part of our life. Like, we'd always be training, or we'd always we've got to get to train. And my older brother, he's a brilliant martial artist. Like, he's had maybe the last 20 years off from training. So I've just started to slowly get him back into it. But he was like, we used to train and do the splits. You know, you got to remember back in the late 80s, early 90s, everything was Van Damme, right? So here's us trying to, you know, come home and make sure we get the splits happening. And he was always older than myself. himself, and he was, a little bit rough with me. So he'd always pushed me a lot as a kid too, to make sure I'd be going to train as well. So, and as you said before, growing up in Broadmeadows and, out there, very rough. Like you wouldn't necessarily go looking for trouble, but it'd come looking for you, so you had to kind of learn to hold your own. And back in those days, and you get a call out like, so-and-so wants to, have a fight with you because they've heard that you can fight and hold your own. So, you virtually get a circle of kids, and you'd have to jump in the middle and duke it out in the middle of the street, so. Martial arts is just one of those things that, we just gravitated towards, I guess. It was just embedded in us from an early age. And thankfully, and I'm in this position now where it's shaped me and given me this foundation in my life that here I am now, 44 years of age. And it's my everything.
Well, that's cool. So thank you for giving us a bit of a history there on where your passion lies, because what a journey it's been. I've looked from afar as a martial arts enthusiast, and, you've been fortunate to participate in the high profile of the UFC. And I guess, in sharing a little bit of that with us in pre-UFC, your Ultimate Fighter and all those things that started to raise your profile. How, your MMA style, how did it sink into your, I guess your life as such?
So could you just rephrase the question just for me for a second?
So how did MMA get into your life pre that Ultimate Fighter stage, pre all that highlight of what occurred?
Gotcha. So 93, 94, maybe even 95, I think. It was all over like a current affair and TV back in those days. And, they're calling it cage fighting, and you'd see it, and these guys would be trying to maul each other. And you're like, oh, this stuff looks deadly. And, and then my brother comes home one day with the VHS of UFC 1, it was called. Obviously, we know what that is now. So we sit there watching it. I can't remember what time at night, and we're just watching the whole thing. And Hoist Gracie comes out at the end, this little guy in a gi, and we're just like, just gobsmacked. And I kid you not, like we watch it, and my mind was blown. Never seen anything like it. Like obviously, yourself, Kyokushin, and various forms of freestyle martial arts and karate that we'd studied up until that point. A little bit of wrist locks or things like that, but we'd never seen anything like that. I remember getting up. First thing I did was jump up and look for the yellow pages, looking for jiu-jitsu. No jiu-jitsu, and this is Melbourne, like mid '90s. There may have been probably I think. Off memory, I can't remember who would have been around back in those days, but I remember there was one place, and it was like, it was way out of reach for myself. So like, So come around mid 2000s, 2007, I began studying Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
I see.
And just took to it, and then I started competing and just snowballed from there, and I never really, look, I was in an opportunity when I was training younger to fight under particular gyms, and fighting was never one of the things that at all appealed to me as a kid.
Really?
Like I just never look. And again, that being said, and this is what I teach all of my students too, like that violence is definitely not any aspect at all in terms of my approach to martial arts, but of course it's there. It's it's just it's such a contradiction, right? But so I was trying to make a point here and I completely forgot.
No. So you've been into the telling your students you got to be cautious of it because fighting wasn't your thing at that time. You weren't into that.
That's right. So so I had opportunities to fight at an early age. So that was what I was trying to get to. So sorry, excuse me, my coffee hasn't quite sunk in just yet.
All good, mate. It's a fun chat. All good.
So eventually got into competing in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and the team I was training with at the time, a lot of MMA fighters that were there, and some guys, were doing some things, and thought, what, I'm actually, quite capable, I reckon.
Sure.
Well enough for Jiu-Jitsu, and I'll give the MMA thing a try. And the coaches back then were, saying to me, look, I was 32 before I had my first fight.
Wow.
Yeah, and you should be well and truly done by that age, looking to end a career at that age, right? So, and they were like, look, just see how you go, have some fun. Don't expect anything out of yourself. Just get in there, have a little bit of fun, and you can always look back and say you had one or two fights, and well, here I am.
That's a good way. A nice segue. Here I am. Well, there you have it. There's a lot of hard work, blood, sweat, and tears that you've just shied off away there. But who was your coaching, the coaching influence at that time, you know? Like you said, because just to share with everyone, and a fair amount of listeners listen overseas, in Melbourne / Australia, but more so Melbourne, the cage was allowed in 2017 when just pre to the event for Ronda Rousey and Holly Holm here in Melbourne. Yeah. So we are, I say it in a manner of, on behalf of myself, we're still fresh. We're still very raw. We're still very young. So, you know, a gentleman like yourself that paved the way pre that in, you know, 2007 and building into, you know, the profile of it, it was still in the boxing ring. You're still getting, again, coaching was very raw as well. Just, you know, there was obviously a lot of people that were specialists in certain styles. We had a great Australian background in martial arts, but who was guiding you through this pathway?
Well, back 2007, I joined a team by the name of Kimakai MMA down here in Chelsea Heights. So I started training under, well, initially when I started training at this place, my sole focus and goal was just to learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I'd had a few years off from martial arts at that point, you know, and I just had my first of 4 daughters. So Tiana was
congratulations.
Born. Yes, I know. 2 grey hairs. So yes, I just wanted to invest my time in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So we had our coach at that time. He was a blue belt, Vlad out at Kimakai. Unfortunately, he passed away just a couple of years after I began training there. So it was quite a shock for all of us there. And Marco Mazzanti, who's the head of Kimakai Karate now, which is what they are. He's a black belt under Peter Devine, and he pretty much, you know, really took over the role of the jiu-jitsu out there. And and the MMA coach, Ed Bavalok, yeah, amazing coach and a good man. And 2009, and just deciding to just knuckle down and train, and you know, just had an amazing experience, you know, just really training and focusing on martial arts, and then got into jiu-jitsu competitions, and then that's where I really felt the sting and the rush of competition. But prior to that point, I'd never wanted to compete in martial arts. I'd always just enjoyed just the training, not being put under pressure to perform, you know. And that was one thing that always kind of turned me off competition. But then I felt the buzz and the adrenaline, and I was like, ooh, that's addictive. I think
you've just answered it. The buzz and the adrenaline. I mean, it takes over, as they say, and when it takes over and you start getting some wins, and then obviously the influence of your coaches towards, hey, keep it up, you're doing great. Is that where it was starting to head? And for your mentality of going, okay, I'll continue on.
You there? Yeah, well, there was that, and also the fact that, you know, we had a lot of competitors at the academy at that point too. So these guys were always competing and fighting, and you know, back in those days, you know, it was kind of like good influence to be around some of these guys that were always wanting to compete and drive and push themselves. So when you're in an environment like that, you know, people that are trying to excel and better themselves in every aspect of whatever field they're applying themselves to, whether it's striking, MMA, jiu-jitsu, you know, there's always going to be that, hey, I'm going to better myself a little bit here. I'm going to better myself there a little bit. I'm going to focus on my wrestling here, or, you know, so there was always that motivation to keep pushing and progress.
What started the angle in you going to the States and when the UFC with when again the Australia-Canada opportunity that came into it? How was that positioned, and share us that moment and highlight?
So I have this conversation with a lot of my students. I'm just going to
please share.
Pedal with this answer a little bit. So prior to trying out for the Ultimate Fighter Tough Nations, which was the second one, the one that I made the cut for, I tried out for the previous season, which Rob Whittaker and some of the other guys were on as well. And, so I turned up for the trials and, you know, did very well at the fighter.
Yeah.
So can you hear me clearly now? Is that okay?
Yep.
Yeah. So didn't make the cut, and because
Yeah.
what had happened was you have to have a particular record on Sherdog, and a lot of the promotions that I fought on at that point weren't registering back in those days. The records on Sherdog. So I was trying to catch up with everyone after this to try to make sure that I had all my records and everything on, so that way,
Right.
looking to get into the UFC at some point. So yeah, just kept making action. So, I used to get up at like, 4 a.m. most days actually, get up at 4 a.m., go for a 5K run, come home, shower, breakfast, be out the door, on site in the CBD, which was probably through traffic, about an hour and a half journey each way every day.
Yep. Wow.
Work on the tools, which is pretty strenuous in the body. Come home, sit with my kids for about a good half an hour, and then back out to training every night again. So that was pretty much my routine for a lot of time. And then I try to get to fight, and just the stress of trying to juggle the bills and everything was quite a drama. So the next year come around, and the announcement comes for the second of the Ultimate Fighters with Australia. And all right, boom, sent in the application. Yep, you've been selected to come and try out. Nice. So I went for the first of the tryouts, and and obviously made it through the first cut, and then up in the hotel and all of that. And so they did all the interviews and all the bits and pieces, and then come home, and I think it was like a 2-month wait before he got an answer. So you can imagine the anticipation. It's like I'm working every day. I'm like, all right, is this like, am I actually going to finish this job, or am I going to get called away to go over to Canada now? And just the anticipation of like, which way it goes,
Yeah.
So got the call. Got told I was in, and made the cut. And mate, as you can imagine, I was just buzzing big time. And just got straight on the phone to my wife, and I told her, and we're just like, oh my God, just blown away. And she's in tears on the other end, and things obviously from that moment have been nothing but upwards. So as of that day, I just finished out the day and told the bosses, yep,
sayonara. Yeah,
that's it. So and since then it's all just pretty much just been a snowball, I guess. Went into the UFC and Ultimate Fighter. I was over in Canada, and then that was an amazing experience, obviously, because when you're over there, like everything you look over your shoulder is UFC branded, to train and be under the watchful eye of a lot of these people. John Jones was over there. We had Roberto Alencar, Tusa, Israel Martinez. Both of these guys coach John Jones, and some of the best coaches over there. And just an amazing experience to be able to train twice a day in this facility that they'd built on site for us to get out there. So it was extremely overwhelming, but and then that was pretty much that with the Canada thing. Obviously we had the fights. We're over there for 7 weeks. There was a lot that happened behind the scenes that, man,
could imagine
some people some stories, they're like, whoa, I'm like, it's amazing
with the coaching there, so you've again, let's lay out the land here, so you're there, and what was your positioning? What were you good at that time? What did you feel your strengths were? And then can you share with us what some of the coaches were seeing and what you benefited from that support over the 7 weeks?
It's the oddest thing. Like when I watch it back now, and
sure,
you hear the commentators, Vik Grujic, striker and da-da-da.
Okay.
Up to that point, most of my fights, I was just a clinch grappler, and kind of catch wrestling, I guess, / jiu-jitsu, and like the ground and pound guys and choke them out type thing. And, I just really like to grind, but, it always had decent enough striking, and I think because in the highlight reel, because of my old freestyle background, I did this spinning jump back kick, and then the way the slow motion, it kind of looks like it comes out into the split, and they had that little highlight. So they just branded me as a striker. So when I was over there, it was, the oddest thing is that, like, I know some of the guys that went over there were very, very focused and just very kind of like knew their part. Like, had Canadian. Some of these guys are training with TriStar and GSP daily, and these guys, so these guys were like, secure. at that point, when I went over there, I didn't even have a coach. So I was
see.
mentioning the previous team, Kimakai, that I was with, and I'd had a split with those guys a year or two before that, you know, so we parted ways, and, you know, I was pretty much on my own and just training and coaching myself. And and I just try to find training partners and try to find coaches and try to find things, but I was just trying to fill in the gaps myself. So I was pretty much at that point, like, I knew what I wanted, but at the same time, I was unsure of myself. That makes any sense.
Yeah.
So look, this is the beautiful thing of retrospect. Could have and all those in betweens, but when I got over there, I wasn't quite sure of who I was, where my place was, and especially being, oh shit, excuse language, but wow,
no.
UFC, it's like I'm here. It's like, my God, I'm on the Ultimate Fighter, and all of these guys, and you look around, like, you know, this guy's good at that, and that guy's good at that, and this guy, he's, you know, and kind of like, what am I good at? What am I going to do? I just know that when I get in there, you know, my first fight was extremely, it was all just nerves. I just remember, like, just trembling, my hands were just, you know. But so like when it comes time for the fight, you know what to do. You know, it's instinct up to that point, you know. But again, I was very unsure of myself. I knew that I'd like to just grapple. I like to get in close. I like to, you know, throw the strike. And,
you did.
Yeah,
you did good. So, which coaches gave you some nuggets? Which was someone that you walked away from there, you know, with the utmost respect? Was there anyone?
Well, look, all the guys that were on there, we had Kyle Noak, who was the head coach of the show. Israel Martinez pretty much took over most of the show because he was Kyle Noak's coach, and he was also John Jones's coach. And you know, Israel Martinez has a school of or a few wrestling schools over in the Midwest in US wrestling. So you can imagine that level of pedigree to have that reputation and step onto a show and, like, he just knew what to boom, 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 you know. So picked up so much from him. But
that's cool.
Roberto Alencar, you know, because I was at that point, you know, very heavily focused on the jiu-jitsu. And he's just, you know, one of those typical Brazilians, you know, all heart, you know, just speaks from the heart, trains from the heart, and everything you just feel with this guy, you know. So I really just connected with Tusa, with his nickname Heaps. So over there, great experience.
Oh, that's great. And so you know, when I'm hearing this and when you're sharing this, which I appreciate, I'm thinking of your family and your family man, and now your 4 daughters, your wife, and the upbringing of Melbourne as such, you know, family and all the above that's there. And you're away for 7 weeks. You come back. How is this being? And even when I was watching, Coach, I was always thinking to myself, you know, because in Kyokushin you go uchideshi, which is a live-in student, and you know those things are very high profile as such. 7 weeks out of a family man's life is enormous. How was the energy coming back, and what was the take with you and your wife at that time?
Well, it's funny you talk about the live-in student, which is what I did for most of 2014 when I was over in San Diego. We'll touch on that a little bit.
That'd be great.
Yeah. But so over there, so you got to remember, like, I think in the last couple of seasons they had of the Ultimate Fighter, and you know, people were allowed to call their families and chat to their wives, and I was like, oh, are you kidding me? So over there, it was more like a lab experiment for us. We were like, you know, lab mice or something, you know, that they just chucked us into this house, and, you know, no music, no TV, couldn't call your family. You know, there was like 7 weeks without even knowing if my wife and kids were okay, you know. So back at that point, I had only just 3 daughters. So Isabella, our youngest now, she was born 2016.
I see.
Or 17. No,
that's all right, mate.
Okay. If my wife's watching, she's gonna.
All good, mate.
So over there at that point, you know, it was extremely stressful. So, you know, you're trying to focus on training and fighting and just doing the best you can. But on the back of my mind the entire time was just everything about my family back home. Like, are they okay? And mind you, when I left too, there was a lot of, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but, you know, I kind of left them in capable of hands of friends, if you want to call them that, you know, friends, people that were going to look over them, because, you know, we didn't have a great deal of money when I left, you know, so there was going to be some sponsorship money coming through, and some of these people were going to be looking over my family, and I didn't know whether that was going to happen. So when I left the day of, contacted these people and said, you know, make sure, please. So sure enough, when I got out, they didn't look after my family, and, you know, they were doing it tough while I was over there. So I we're over there in Canada. So the day the production stops, I got handed a telephone, and I jumped on the phone and speaking to my wife and kids after 7 weeks, you know. So I was an absolute mess, you know, talking to my daughters, you know, and I was just broke down in tears, you know.
Of
Even had some of
course.
the Canadian guys coming up and hugging me, you know.
Of course. Yeah. Oh, what a moment. Jeez. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I don't know how to say well done, but you know, in respect of to your
yeah.
wife at the time, and I can feel. I've got 3 kids, and I can feel
Oh,
for it as such, you know.
horrendous.
And
Yeah.
yeah. So you know, Coach, you what a journey, what a moment, what an experience. And then on the way back now, the dinner table sit with with the beautiful wife, and I mean, you know, what happens there? You know, how are you? What happens? What are you feeling? Where do you go towards after that experience?
Well, after that, I had my first win on the Ultimate Fighter, and the second fight was a loss. A point I'd never even thought possible from within the half guard. And all credit to the opponent, Sheldon
I saw
Westcott,
that.
pulled it off very nice. It was actually very tight. I just remember seeing the stars. Whoa, what's happening? Damn.
Yeah.
And yeah, come home and sitting with the wife and the kids. But at that point, I was just so relieved to just be home. There was a point even when I was over there in Canada, like it was just amazing. Like I'm 7 foot deep in snow. It's just the Canadian, you know, Midwest or out west or whatever you want to call it. You know, it's just amazing out there and beautiful scenery. And finally get to come home and spending time with the family. And then what next? Where to?
Yeah.
What's going to happen here? And then, you know, where I was training at the time, I got a phone call. You know, I had the phone always near me because I got an email saying, you know, just keep the phone nearby. You may possibly get a call. You may not. So, yeah, and I got a phone call, and Joe Silva giving me a call from the US, from Las Vegas. Yeah. I was training at the time, so I just dropped everything. And like Joe Silva's going, okay, yep, you got to fight. Yeah, we're looking at Ultimate Fighter finale, going back over to Canada and this and that. You got to about 7 or 8 weeks to train for the fight. I was like, oh yes. Obviously lost that fight, but
no. It's tough.
But
it was tough.
yeah, so it was a great experience. So that kind of, you know, again, and all right, now I've got to make an impression and try to tick all the boxes and, you know, and train for the fight. And so then that was from there. That's where I started to search for a team to go out and train. And that's where I made my way over to Alliance MMA over in San Diego from there. Right. So.
And walk us through that bit, you know, that because again, what I share, what I'm feeling there, you know, that moment, that loss, that experience, then you've got opportunities and, you know, again, balancing act of coming back to Oz or staying abroad where the flavor is, and the coaching and the elite level of teams are based in the US, correct?
Yeah. And again, at that point, like I was training with the group down here in Melbourne, and I was training out of this facility, but again, never had no coaching, you know, and never had a coach at that point. So I was trying to train myself and then try to find quality of coaches and training partners. Yeah. But, you know, back, what was that, 2014, early 2014.
Yes.
Yeah, there was really like a couple of teams that were about, but, you know, it's,
yes,
I just thought I wanted to keep doing my own thing at that point. So at that point, I made contact with Brandon Vera, who came down and did a seminar, and got to know him a little bit. And so he gave me his number and Viber. So I messaged him and said, you know, is it right to come over and train with you guys over in Alliance in San Diego? Yes. And he's like, yeah, come over, and, you know, I'll give you Coach Eric Del Fierro's details, and email him and get in touch and set it all up. So I did that, and made my way over to San Diego and under Eric Del Fierro. And, you know, again, that for me was one of the biggest highlights of my life, getting over to train over in San Diego. And because when I was in the Ultimate Fighter, it just literally felt there was a lot of stress and a lot of pressure to perform, and I couldn't just relax, and, you know, not knowing what my family was doing, and it was just too much playing on my mind. But when I got over to San Diego, it was almost the same type of goal, I guess, if you will, because, you know, I've got a UFC fight, training with the international crew, and, you know, over in San Diego, they're a little bit of a different scenery as opposed to Canadian winter. You know, it was over at I think it was it spring over there in the US, or autumn?
Sure.
I can't remember now. Spring, yes. So
Nice.
14 Alliance, they had, it was just unbelievable. I couldn't begin to tell you the amount of people. Like, so for any one session,
Go for it.
there'd be probably close to 20 plus UFC fighters, and you're talking some of the biggest
Ooh.
legends in the game back. Yeah, about another 10 to 15 Bellator fighters. So 30 to 40 of these elite pro killers. And it was
Creme
just
de la
amazing.
creme.
Dominic Cruz, Brandon Vera, Phil Davis, Jeremy Stevens, Mike
Jesus.
Chandler was training with us. And, the list just goes on and on. So, I've always had someone to just train with or drill with or just pick their
No doubt.
brain that entire year. And for those that don't know who Neil Mallinson is,
Okay.
look this guy up. And I had the privilege and the pleasure of learning from this guy. And this is one man that I always said to myself that if I had him from the beginning of my career
Right.
all the way through, I'd definitely have been a different person today, because I had a lot of the goods physically and skill wise for MMA and to stay successful, but I didn't have the guidance and the coaching, and my mindset was always just kind of a little bit all over the place because I had never had anybody to give me a real direction. So here's what we need to focus on, get in my head and kind of make me believe in myself. But Neil Mallinson was one of the guys that I learned an unbelievable amount from. Approaches his coaching and great. Again, I'd spent probably maybe I think 3 fight camps over 2 months each. So I spent most of a good half of a year over in San Diego. Go over and train, fight, come back. Train, fight, come back.
I see.
So it was a good process. 2014. So yeah, big year for me.
Wow, that's cool. Again, let's appreciate some things that just came up to me. That's only meaning 7 years ago, right? And again, that journey in a year of traveling back and forth and so on. And again, you would have just been a sponge, and to be honest, I'm overwhelmed by you not having a coach in that period of time until it got to that team. And then you're surrounded by 30 creme de la creme, and then you're just being able to, tap into so much. Who was, as Coach Neil was your influence there? What was something that you're breeding into that he's given you that you're passing on now to some of your students and fighters as such?
Technique. You can get people to mimic and parrot what you show them. Getting into a person's head and connecting on a one-to-one level is a different ball game when it comes to coaching. You've got to have the ability to connect to a student. If you have the ability to connect to a student, you get them to understand, and it's like everything, kids in school, and 5-year-olds in the dojo, and regardless of where it is, but having the ability to just kind of reach you. And this is one of the things that Neil Mallinson was really good at. And, he's just such a great coach, just his attitude and his character. He's never stressed. He's never aggressive. He's never angry. He's very calm, collected, relaxed. And if you've seen Neil Mallinson, and for those that know who he is, I describe him, he's kind of like about 6'7", 6'8", absolute monster of a guy. He was Randy Couture's coach. He's just trained all over the place. He's, one of the most regarded coaches. He actually has a book on triangle chokes. So he wrote the book. When people say, who wrote the book? But yeah, just the way he'd approached, the way he trained and taught, really rubbed off on myself, so big influence.
Oh, that's cool. That's great. That's great to hear, because I was starting to get to a point where I was like, how did he get to this far without a coach or without someone that was giving you, that the influence and the strategy and tactics. So did you start to change some of your approach as an athlete at that time from a athletic point of view? Because in that period, it started to become a nutrition, strength and conditioning. It wasn't just being the good fighter and you could scrap and do well in jits. Now you had to complement a lot of things to your arsenal.
Yes, and this is where I kind of lost my way when I made the UFC, because prior to that point, I fought at 84. I do the weight cuts, failed a few weight cuts along the way. trying to focus and trying to find myself, especially when I got over there. Like I really started to incorporate a lot more wrestling and learning actual real freestyle wrestling from, Coach Brian Keck was our wrestling coach over there, and he was part of the Olympic Wrestling Association. Wow. As well. And unfortunately, he passed away a couple of years ago, which is extremely sad to myself. And so he the level of wrestling that was over there, and obviously, like I said, the amount of fighters that were there were just, as good as it gets, So just trying to find myself was something that was extremely difficult. So I got over there, and like, am I a wrestler? Am I a jiu-jitsu guy? Am I strike? I don't really understand my position now. It's like, okay, because I didn't have real guidance. And this is the thing that, somebody say, hey, Vic, this is what we're going to work on. This is where your strengths are. Let's focus on getting this really good. Let's focus. When I got over there, I was just trying to round everything off. But then when I went into the fights, there was no real direction. And, again, you're talking about guys that would be training at a TriStar or some of these other places, and they had game plans. And they'd go in and they'd be studying myself and, okay, you're going to do this, that, and the other. And then this is how you're going to win the fight. And so that, coupled with, okay, well, you're not an 84 guy, you're a 77 kilo guy. And mind you, I was walking around 92, 93 kilos. And I was, pretty trim, and I was always in good shape. Like at any point I could, pull up my shirt and you'd see a ripping six pack, so I was always in good shape. So, okay, all right, I'm going to drop to 77. So this is after my first fight in the UFC, the finale, which was Nordin Talib. And yeah, he's an absolute beast of a guy. Such nice guy too. And after that fight, I was like, yeah, all right. Yeah, some of these guys he dropped down to 77 too. But and I still wasn't doing the right things nutritionally to get my body weight down naturally, to walk around about the 85, 86 mark. So I'd still walk around about 89, 90 kilos. So last 4 or 5 of my fights, I was walking around about 89, 90, and I'd cut down to 77 the week of the fight. Yeah. Ooh, and this is one of the things. And then, I'm looking at guys like Calvin Gastelum and Rob Whittaker that just decided to say, you know what, these weight cuts are detrimental. They're actually killing my career. I'm just going to stick to doing what I'm doing. And these guys, a lot younger than what I was in my mid-30s at that point, 36, 37. Yes. And I remember one of my biggest weight cuts was like, I tell people that this is where I'm going to be very staunch on my own students, looking at weight cuts. That one of the weight cuts I did, I was as close to like 89.5 or so to make 77 within 5 or 6 days. So I started just dropping all the calories out and everything, and then 7 kilos overnight. So I did 3.5 the night before, got up the next morning, and then finish up the final 3.5 kilos. So you can imagine trying to recover after that. And even back then, we were using the IV and all of that, and you never feel 100%. You get in there, and like some of the fights I've had, I look back now and I'm watching these punches bounce off these guys' heads, and they're not even really now, at full energy, and without having to cut all that weight, if I hit a guy in the face, sure enough, they're going to drop, you look back at these fights, and this is some of the things that go through your head,
Oh, wow. Thanks for sharing that. I mean that a lot, because this is the part of the shuffle and part of the reason I did this. And I thank you for taking the time again, because you would tell your students these amazing, influential moments in your career as the coach now. And that's something that, we may only get a chance to hear or read in an article if someone else spoke to you in some way, or you have to attend your classes or be a member in your facility. So I appreciate you sharing some of that, because I think it's it's coming into that phase where we need to hear more stories and more experiences of people like yourself that have been there, done that, and done it under a lot of pressure. And, we have to appreciate that and understand. To be honest, I fought in Japan and cut from 84 to 77, 83 to 77. I thought that was hell, and I'm not nowhere near in the level that you were at in respect of, this is a profession. This is your career.
That's still a big weight cut, though.
Yeah, but you were doing this with, you know, the profession and career. I'm doing it just to, you know, get into a world tournament and have a bit of fun on the side. So that on top of what you've just said, and then the pressure of what was happening. Wow, I appreciate you sharing that. And to the listeners, you know, you got have a listen to that. You know, we start to see these people do that side of weight cutting, and then how were you doing it with your weight training? Was that something, because while you're cutting weight, your energy levels are X, and then you're not here to put more muscle on as such. What was, because, and again, I'm trying to give everyone an idea here that it was just progressing at that stage. Maybe it was big, maybe it was a lot of intel in the States because of the elite teams and the elite coaches, but
yeah,
it was still a thing, wasn't it? Where strength and conditioning was starting to come in, plyometric training and all these other factors.
Yeah. So, what was I, 36, 37-ish at that time? I was fighting in the UFC, and one fight in particular, I had my fight in Sydney, which I lost. And again, I'm going to credit that down to the weight cut and also my carelessness, a combination of both. But prior to that fight, I was training with the powerlifting team. And I was doing powerlifting sessions twice a week in amongst my jiu-jitsu, the wrestling,
sure,
you know, all the sparring and all of that. But I was starting to get up to a point, like I'd always hit the weights from an early age. And, you know, strength and conditioning has always been a big focus on, you know, being an all-rounded athlete. So, and I was aware of that from a very early age. And I was doing a lot of powerlifting with this group, and, you know, I'd always known how to squat and deadlift and chest bench press, and, you know, and I had a good physique when I was younger as well. I'd always trained and hit the weights and all of that bit. But training with these guys, and, you know, I was starting to bench press, squat like over 200 kilos, and then deadlifting like, you know, whatever excessive amounts, close to 200, and like I was doing a mad achieve, you know. So then I was doing a lot of that, and then I got the call up for my fight in Sydney, and this is where I look. This is all our off season, mind you, by the way. So prior to the 8-week fight camp. So then I got the message I'm fighting in Sydney. So I was hitting the weights very hard at that time, and I came over to Alliance in San Diego very strong, and I was actually probably hovering about maybe a kilo or two heavier than what I was previous fight camp, but that was just the amount of muscle that I packed on, and I dropped a lot more fat, but it wasn't like an excessive amount of muscle that I built, obviously, just through the strength training, but yeah, got a lot stronger. So when I went over there, dropped all the powerlifting out, and it was all just focused on just all CrossFit style training. So, you know, sled runs and kettlebells and plyometrics and, you know, sprints and things like that. So the weight started to come down, and, you know, but the strength remained. But again, went into the fight confident with this one, felt fantastic, but the weight cut. And that was the first, that was my UFC fight that I missed weight by, I think it was 800 grams.
Oh my goodness.
So, and at that point I cut so much weight, there was literally almost felt like nothing had come out of me. So they gave us an hour to cut the rest of the weight, and I'm freaking out, like, what am I going to do? So then I said, we've got a van out in the back, and Anthony Parash also fell weight too. So we're like, okay, going to grab both Anthony and Vic. We're going to chuck them out in the van, out in the back in the car park. This is outside of the Vector Arena in it was Vector, Sydney. I don't know. I can't remember the name of it. Ace Arena, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So yeah, I can't remember quite the name. But anyway, so here's us. We've got a couple of blankets and towels overhead. They've got the vents on, full steam, the heater. And we're trying to cut weight. So they cut the extra kilo, made the weight, but yeah, the next day I remember going into the fight. I felt strong, I actually recovered really well, felt great, but then, so it takes too much out of you, those weight cuts.
Coach, just and in summarizing this part of it, which I appreciate. So you got down to 77 in those moments. What did you put back on? So ready for fight day. This is interesting.
So that was where everybody, like, you'd see the benefits, you know. So I did my weight cut, made 77 kilos. By the end of that night, I was back up to 89. Yeah. So
Fluid,
mind you, when
fluid,
you
fluid.
dehydrate so much, and I had to take photos of myself because it's not very often that you look all vascular, you know. So I got these little photos that, you know, so it looked the part, but again, and I just remember getting up the next day, and you know, when you just got a cold and a flu and you just kind of feel like you just,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
when you can't breathe and you're trying to catch your breath. That's how it felt for me the next day going into the fight. So physically looked bigger and I looked stronger, but just, and I got clipped by one knee, but it wasn't all that bad. Like, but it was just enough to just shake me, and just the fight was over from that point, you know?
Oh man,
Yeah, I
that is
know.
unbelievable.
And this is where, like, you know, this is what we're discussing about, you know, from the coaching perspective of things. So I can definitely look back and say, you know, I've had a lot of things that I'd like to change. And if I could have done this and I could have done that, but this is where the beautiful thing of, like I was speaking before about retrospect, you get to look back and this is what I could have done better, but it's also that learning tool for myself now to pass on. This is where you're not going to do this weight cut. We're going to sit at this weight now. We understand that this is your skill set. We need to focus on this. So my students are, you know, they're like family to me, and I've always been focused on, you know, treating everybody, you know, very special. That's the way I kind of look at my students. So, you know, this is where my fighters or anybody that competes, jiu-jitsu or whatever it is that they want to do, going to play a bigger focus on making sure they don't cut too much weight. That's for sure.
Oh, nice little summary. Nice summary there, Coach. And fantastic, because that just fired me straight up, because that is exactly why I wanted to get you on. You have such an invaluable experience, and now with your facility and what you're doing, I commend you. It's fantastic. And this is the angle in getting more people like yourself that have gone through the ups and downs and now being able to pass it on. And in a way, you know, for anyone listening, go and train and see Coach Vic. But those that can't, that are overseas in state, invaluable lessons here for all of us to take on board. And I appreciate that. And I thank you so much for sharing that, you know, today.
My pleasure.
Yeah. Everyone, thank you so much, Coach. I mean, you know, give yourself a bit of a mention here where your facility is and where people can contact you if need be. And if there's any plans or any things that are happening, please, the floor's yours for the next couple of minutes to share. Go for it.
So out here in Cranbourne West, Team Sparta Martial Arts Academy, and I place a big emphasis on saying that it's a martial arts academy, not a gym, because again, we were speaking earlier on about martial arts, and it's a discipline, it's a way of life. It's not just about, you know, being a fighter. Okay, martial arts or fighting stems from martial arts. So come on down. We've got, you know, children's classes. You know, I love kids, obviously. I've got 4 of them myself, so we train kids a lot here. Big jiu-jitsu program. We've got a good striking program here. I've got an Olympic freestyle wrestling coach. I do all the jiu-jitsu, all the MMA. I do the kids striking too. I've got a sparring group, and I train pro and amateur fighters as well. So we've got it all pretty much under the one roof, and 400 and something square facility. So it's enormous. The place looks fantastic.
That's amazing. Exciting. Congratulations. Well done. Thank you so much for your time. I commend you with all your challenges and all the ups and milestones and highlights. And thank you so much for your time, Coach. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, Pat. Pleasure.
Thank you so much. Take care. Big wish to everyone. Thanks, everyone. And what an almighty guest that was. I hope you took a lot out of it. And let's look out for the next guest. Thanks for everyone's support. Take care. Have a great week. Big wish to you all. Us.